Do you seek the freedom to pursue greater meaning and purpose in your life? Is there something that you're passionate about that you'd like to support by giving time, talent, or money? Do you seek a level of financial freedom to live an ideal life as you uniquely define it? Welcome to the Money and Meaning Show with Jeff Bernier, a show dedicated to helping you gain the confidence and freedom to lead a life of personal significance and help you get your actions and resources in alignment with what matters most.
Hello and welcome to the Money and Meaning Show. My name is Jeff Bernier. I am the president and founder and a wealth advisor at Tandem Growth Financial Advisors, a wealth management firm in the greater Atlanta area. In this show, I try to put together what I call means and meaning. So we try to do something a little different on this show. We try to have deep conversations about your values and your purpose and what really makes your heart come alive, so to speak, and marry that with deep topics around financial planning and investment management and wealth management for the goal of creating the margin, creating the money and the time and the energy to go do what you're called to do. So that's really the idea behind the Money and Meaning Show. I'm, again, delighted that you've decided to spend a few minutes with me this afternoon. I've got a guest today. I'm really excited about this. A year or so ago, I had on David Holstrom, who is a friend and a colleague, who is a really smart investment guy. He used to sit on our investment committee. And we did sort of behind the curtain look at the kind of conversations we have in the investment committee meetings. And so I thought it might be kind of fun to do that again, but this time talk about broader financial planning topics with Mona Fahmy, who is a wealth advisor in our firm and really heads up our wealth management practice. And one of the things that occurred to me as I do these shows is, I talk a lot about people moving into halftime. They're in the locker room strategizing for the second half. And so I think oftentimes people get the impression that having the luxury of having these conversations about meaning and purpose is only for people moving into retirement. And I believe nothing could be further from the truth. I believe that everyone can experience financial confidence and what Cal Newport calls the deep life at any phase of life, and through sound financial planning is a means to that. So that's why I wanted to bring Mona on, because she is really well equipped to talk about these subjects. And let me talk a bit about Mona. So Mona, I wrote a blog post about this a while back. I've been blessed with what Jim Collins calls who luck, and it's all about, and you all have heard these phrases about getting the right people on the bus. And I learned early on as we were building our firm, it was really about the people, the quality of the people. So with Mona, I got some really good who luck. So she came limping literally into my door in 1998. I think she had a sprained ankle when we first did the first visit. And so I was fortunate to convince her to come join me in this journey back in 1998. And it's been a great journey and a ride together. So Mona holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia. Go Dogs. She has a master's degree in business administration from the American University in Cairo, Egypt. She holds a certified fund specialist designation and is an accredited investment fiduciary, and she is really great at what she does. So welcome, Mona, to the Money and Meaning Show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I am.
Didn't think I was going to get an invitation. I'm not sure what took so long.
I'm a slow learner, as most people who have listened to this show at least once have probably figured out by now. But anyway, thank you for being here, and I'm sorry it's taken me this long. I always like to start the show. I mean, culture matters a lot, and the people matter a lot, and I always like to start with guests getting to at least introduce us to themselves and their family and things like that. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your family, Mona.
So I graduated from the University of Georgia. I actually went to high school in Athens, Georgia.
Okay.
So I was born in California. My dad got transferred to Georgia in the mid-'80s, right when I was starting high school. It was a little bit of a culture shock going from California to Georgia, but definitely a lot of good lessons learned. My parents are actually still in Georgia. I graduated from high school in that area, went to the University of Georgia. I am now in the North Fulton area. I've been in Milton, cannot believe it. It's been almost 22 years.
Right.
I have 2 children, a daughter who is 24 and a son who is 20. We had the luck of having both of them graduate from their respective educations at the time, my daughter college and my son high school. In May of 2020, right in the middle of COVID time.
Yeah.
But
so they both graduated in COVID year.
Yes.
One from college, one from high school.
Not the celebration I was expecting at all. I think I was more bummed about it than they were.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, they graduated, and they're both doing well. My son's at school at Kennesaw State University. My daughter is in New York. So I'm officially an empty nester. I'm kind of waiting to see who's going to boomerang back and how many times they're going to boomerang back. But I've lived in this area for a really long time. A lot of great communities involved in different organizations, and really love this area.
Great, that's awesome. Well, thanks for that. I talked a little bit about your joining us back in '98. So talk to us a little bit about what you were doing before joining, if you could remember that far back,
right?
What you were doing prior to joining Tandem Growth, and also a little bit about your career path at Tandem Growth.
Yeah, absolutely. So right out of college, I was hired by Wachovia Bank in what was their retail management program. And loved it. It was a great program. I love people, and I love kind of finance and solving puzzles. And so it was really a great introduction. So I worked there for about a year, but I had this real, inner drive, yearning to learn a little bit more about my heritage. My parents immigrated to the U.S. from Egypt in the late 60s.
Wow.
And so I always had this yearning to kind of learn more about it, kind of live the culture versus just visiting for 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But being ever the pragmatic person, I was like, I can't just go and waste time. So I found an accredited Master's of Business Administration program through the American University.
Gotcha.
So I went with the thought of learning about my heritage as well as furthering my education. And I was very lucky, and I found a job with what was at the time Cooper and Lybrand.
Right. The big 4 accounting or 6 accounting, whatever they were back
they've
then.
now since then merged.
Yeah.
And I was in their management consulting department, which basically were doing feasibility studies for different companies that wanted to invest in Egypt.
Gotcha.
So spent a few years there. Also ended up working for Citibank for their global department in Cairo a little bit. So kind of continued that path of the finance world and solving puzzles. I think that's always kind of been a big part of my education as well as professional career. Moved back into the States when I decided to start a family because you definitely appreciate all of the opportunities that the States have once you've been outside of the United States.
Yeah.
And came back here and was really just kind of looking for a job. A lot of the companies in the Atlanta area at the time weren't really sure how to use my international experience. That for some reason it was a bit intimidating. And you had this ad, and I answered the ad. And as you mentioned, I limped right in.
Yeah.
And you were very upfront with me that you thought at the time I was overqualified, I think is what you said.
I remember that. Yeah.
But I needed a job, and you were very honest and transparent in saying you were hoping to find someone that could grow with your practice that you were trying to build.
Right.
And so I said, let's give it a shot and see what happens. And, I really loved just what I was seeing and learning about an industry that, quite frankly, I didn't even know existed when I graduated from college.
Right.
So that's how I kind of fell into this industry.
Yeah, very cool. So what do you like, or what interests you most about wealth management? I mean, what made you decide at some point, I want to be an advisor?
I think just honestly watching you were quite, whether it was intentional or not, you were quite the mentor. I was really very involved in the process. And fortunately, I had the skill set and the love of kind of people that allowed me to really quickly learn and watch your process and to really assist you and take things off your plate. And in the meantime, just kind of found that, wow, this is really cool. Look at the impact we're having on people's lives. Look at all of the different scenarios that we're handling, all the different things that come up in a person's life that we're able to tackle. So it just ended up really being a perfect match between kind of my unique abilities that we use a lot in our firm, and as well as my education and technical skill set.
Right. Yeah, got to do both.
Got to do
the relational, emotional, as well as the technical. And that's what I'd say about you, Mona. I mean, you do marry those two really well. I mean, I think you're probably the best listener in the office. And empathetic and caring, and I've had conversations with people about what makes a really good advisor or a good advisory firm. And I think there's three things that make a really good advisory firm. You've got to be caring. You got to have some empathy and care about people. You've got to be technically excellent. Right. You got to understand the technical aspect. And then as a firm, you've got to have operational excellence.
Right.
So you actually get things done. And you're pretty unique. I think you're pretty great in all of those. So what about our approach, the tandem growth approach? What's different about it that resonates with your clients, do you think? What makes us unique to our clients?
I think what's really wonderful, I know it may sound cliche, but really it's that we have a process. That process, there's the big picture process that we use for the tandem growth way of how a prospect gets to learn about our firm, how they decide to engage us, and once they engage us, how they move forward. So there's that aspect, but internally, which I think, I don't think people see it, but I think they feel it in the results that they get. We do have a lot of processes. So as a person who constantly, I feel like my mind is going a mile a minute. It's just like I'm all over the place. Having that grounded process and having the tools within the firm to make sure that all of the stuff that I want to follow up with a client and remember about a client, and we've got a way to systematically put that in our day-to-day work.
Yeah.
And especially as I'm getting older, my memory's not as good. So having a way to kind of keep track and say, oh, yes, I wanted to check in on this client about XYZ issue to make sure that they're okay, that there's nothing there's anything I can do to help them with. So the process really,
the secret
really
sauce is the process.
Absolutely, because once you have that process in place and it's working, it really allows the advisor, and I think the client as well, to really hone in on the more kind of emotional, soft stuff that ultimately ends up impacting their plan.
Right.
So it's not a waste of time because those things that are driving their fears, their dreams, their desires, that more than anything else subconsciously affects the decisions that they're making day to day when they're out living their life.
Yeah. So the benefit of the process gives you the ability to do heart-to-heart, deep discovery and ask questions, because you know where the gaps are that you'll address in the process, but it gives you the ability to custom work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having a system allows you. It's almost like a paradox. So anyway, I'm just curious that you would say that. I think when I think about our firm and think about the things that we try to do, it's both. It's both, again, marrying the caring with the process, having a process so things don't fall through the cracks. So as you're helping clients create clarity and confidence to live a great life, what do you find most rewarding in your work? So what really gets you jazzed about the work that you do for clients?
I think it's really watching a client's life unfold. It is so rewarding to sit with a client a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later and watch just the amazing journey that they've personally taken and kind of being a witness to that. And we all know, we've all lived long enough to know that it's a bumpy ride sometimes in life. Yeah. Things don't go according to plan, but being able to share in that journey and really alleviate the stress on sometimes what are some really, really difficult moments in a person's life,
Right.
I find to be incredibly rewarding.
Yeah. Being that resource and being that friend and partner and confidant and
absolutely.
listener. Yeah. Yeah. I knew that was what you would probably say because that's what you do with excellence. So where do you find clients struggle the most? I mean, we talk a lot about getting their actions as resource in alignment with what matters. And these are all great phrases that I use all the time. But when you're meeting with a couple or a family and you're trying to help them build a financial plan together, what are the areas where they tend to struggle the most, do you think? Are there particular areas that are common that people struggle?
I find, regardless of the phase of life that a family is in, unexpected challenges or opportunities related to other family members. I would say a common theme, even though our client base and our prospective clients, they come from such a varied background as far as education, phase of life, beliefs.
Right. Values.
Absolutely. The one thing that seems to be common among all of them, they all are family stewards.
Yeah.
Right?
They care about their
They
family.
all care about their family, and they have this priority of, I got to take care of my family no matter what. And so, again, regardless of the phase of life, a lot of things that come up are related to other family members, whether it's children, whether it's grandchildren, whether it's their own parents, and trying to figure out how do I kind of appease my conscience and feel like I'm doing the most for that family member without derailing my own plan.
Yeah.
And without potentially enabling, if it's a challenge, a behavior that may not be acceptable.
Yeah.
And that's
Family
the
issues.
area that I find is the one thing that they all struggle with because, again, they're family stewards. So their instinct is to jump right in and to help.
Right.
And to help.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty common, I think, across most of the clients that we serve. We when you're talking about the plan and I focus so much on the investment side. And I was just reading the other day about, some of these practices we use in the investments. Yeah. Well, they work fine in a laboratory at MIT with the math.
Right.
The math works.
Right.
And then you get these darn people involved, and they don't work quite so well. And so juggling the challenges around taking care of your family and how much is enough and all those kinds of issues. So, yeah. So a lot of the audience occasionally, won't be familiar with working with an advisor. So you talked a little bit about process. So walk me through a little bit about a new client when they come on board, kind of what the process looks like for a new client.
Right. It seems a little time intensive in the beginning, but it's really, really important. So once a prospect decides that they are going to engage us for a ongoing relationship, the first thing is really kind of onboarding, kind of setting the stage of what the rules are, which is signing an advisory agreement, setting expectations, going through kind of the legalese and making sure everything is set and there's a clear understanding of what our promises and what their rights are. So that's really, really important in the front. And then we're just getting a ton of information, as much information that a client, and we try to make it as least cumbersome as we possibly can. So whatever method works for a client, we're trying to get all their information. Financial statements, mortgage statements, any other related debt, employee benefits, their wills, their tax returns, everything we possibly can get from a client. As well, we have them fill out a little questionnaire so we can kind of gauge kind of where their head is at on certain things. And then we have what is probably, I think, one of the funnest meetings. It's a long meeting, but one of the funnest meetings is what we call a discovery meeting. And in this meeting, we spend the majority of the time, yes, we go through the actual papers that they've brought in, making sure we've got everything covered, but we really spend a lot of time on what this household wants, right? And we're just getting a lot of history. Like one of my favorite things is we kind of build a family tree. And I love doing that because I love to see the people in the background that helped kind of build this couple that I'm seeing in front of me today.
Yeah. It may impact the plan, as you mentioned before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a lot of family dynamics that end up impacting a plan. So, and then we ask a lot of questions about where you're trying to go. And in an ideal world, what does that look like? You know, how early do you get to retire? What does funding education look like?
Yeah.
How are you, what are your dreams? Do you want a vacation home? Do you just want to be able to rent someplace every year? You know, are you trying to do this big project and build a pool in your backyard?
Yeah.
Whatever it may be, we go through all of the ideals. And then we kind of tone it back a little bit and say, okay, if ideals can't be met, what are the things that you consider acceptable? And we start kind of creating the guardrails of what we're going to do for trade-offs in their plan. And then the next meeting at that point would be usually, I always give the client the choice. I have some clients who love digging deep into the investment process, others not so much. And so for clients who want a little bit more of an education, we have them do a meeting, a collaborative portfolio design meeting, usually that you run, where you kind of just dive in on our investment philosophy, what it is that we believe in, how the markets work, and kind of set the stage of how a portfolio will be managed. Again, and so that meeting is important. And then a few weeks later, we get together for an actual implementation. So we actually do the plan. And in that meeting, we just go through, this is what your plan is saying. These are the items that we need to tackle. And then it's just tackling those things. And, you know, you always say it's hard to eat the elephant all in one bite.
Right.
It is very true. So we prioritize. What are the things that really need to be kind of tackled first? What's a realistic time frame? What's stuff that we can put off for 6 months? What's stuff that can be put off for a year later?
Right.
And then we're there just kind of in our review cycle at that point.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So implementation could be a lot of things, though. It could be tax
absolutely.
stuff. It could be refinancing mortgages. It could
Absolutely.
be paying off debt, wills, trust.
Wills, auditing beneficiaries. That's a big one. Like, you know, I'll have a client who maybe they just did their wills.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, your beneficiaries don't match up at all with what
your
your
documents.
estate plans.
Yeah.
So let's tackle that first.
dealing with the gaps.
And a lot of times it's easy. Sometimes it's really easy stuff. Sometimes it's a little bit more complicated and time consuming.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, we just prioritize together. If there's something that's such a red flag then we just push it up to the list and say this is something that really needs to be tackled first.
Yeah. Well, that's helpful. So, I talked earlier about about the idea in our firm helping people create the margin, the capacity to live their version of a meaningful life as they define it. And as I also mentioned, just naturally over the last 36 years I've been doing this, we've attracted a lot of people who are in sort of that, moving into that fourth quarter, right? Moving into the retirement phase, if you will. As I also mentioned, is this is really not just about people who are moving into the retirement phase. And so you serve, and we serve as a firm, people who are building wealth, who are still busy with kids in middle school or high school, and they're very busy, and they've got careers, and again, I believe that sound planning can give you the freedom at all stages of life. I mean, that's kind of the basis that I operate on. I'd love for you just to talk briefly about the typical challenges of this second group, this wealth building group. So, what are the challenges that the typical family has that's building wealth for the future? They're not moving into the second half yet. They're still in Act One of this play. What are the typical challenges that they're facing that they have to negotiate?
Yeah, it's interesting because this is an area I would say in the 24 some years I've worked with you and in this industry that I really feel like it's a growing area with a growing need. I remember.
Why do you say that?
Well, clients who were kind of on the verge of retiring, we'd often hear the comment, "Man, I wish I had known about you 20 years ago."
Right.
And we kind of started keep hearing that, and it kind of changed our focus of maybe that's something we should consciously try to make an impact on is people prior to this point, because I truly believe that the earlier you start planning, the further you'll go in your journey with less stress. Because
More options.
Absolutely, because I would say the biggest issue for this demographic, people in that phase of life, is that their resources are pulled in so many different directions, both time and money.
Yeah.
Right? So busy careers, kids are in the middle of school as well as activities, parents are aging, and they're trying to be social, right? They're trying to have their own life as well.
Take a vacation once in a while.
Exactly. And so time-wise, they just don't have a ton of time. And then as far as financial, same thing. They're trying to pay down their mortgage, potentially help a parent, educate their kids now, giving them all the opportunities now, as well as encourage whatever hobbies they may have, whatever skills those kids are starting to develop, as well as trying to save for retirement and as well as trying to enjoy the journey. And so they're constantly torn between, man, I want to enjoy. I see how quickly my kids are growing and I want to have fun with them.
Yeah.
But college is right around the corner.
Right.
What do I do?
Yeah.
And so this strain
Allocation
on
of
resources is
both time
really their biggest
time,
issues.
energy, and money.
Yeah, and again, they still have a tendency to be family stewards, so they do want to do what's best.
Yeah.
And they're bright people. It's not like they couldn't go and research and try to make decisions about, do I do a Roth 401k or a traditional 401k? Do I use the Georgia 529? They could do the research. They don't have the time.
Or the energy.
They don't have, they just really don't.
Yeah.
They really don't.
Yeah, it's amazing. I see this. It's really it's kind of a metamorphosis when this wealth building couple comes into the office and they're just swamped with work responsibilities and they may not even be absolutely in sync with what their goals are. They may have, in the big stuff they usually are, but on the tangential things they might not unlike.
They usually want to go to the same place. They just have different ideas how to get there.
Yeah, and I mean, I can relate to this in my own home. One of us might be more interested in experiences, and the other one might like a new sofa. I mean, just silly things like that. But the metamorphosis that I'm referring to is, this couple will come in, and they'll think that they are, they're stressed because they've got all these competing things going on. And just by having a plan, even if it's not the ideal plan, just by having a plan, understanding the choices, the freedom I see it. I see it in like a 3 or 4 month period.
Oh, yeah.
Month one they come in and it's a really difficult time because they've got a lot of opportunities because they're doing well in their careers and all that. They just don't have a lot of time.
Right.
And they have stress because they're trying to do the right thing. And then 3 months later, you see them, and they still have some of the same challenges, but they have a plan around what are we going to allocate that they end up agreeing to. And it's just the freedom that you see is really quite interesting. So I think that's a large part of what you were saying about these challenges. Yeah. So let's do a couple more here, and then we'll wrap up. But let's talk about this wealth building couple or family. And so let's say they're in their early 40s, and they both work for large companies with great benefits, and they might have kids in high school or middle school or whatever. So what are the kinds of things that you help them with? What are the things that you're addressing in terms of a wealth management plan?
Right. So once I have a clear idea of truly what their goals are, what it is that they're trying to accomplish, both near term and long term, then I've got kind of the general vision. And then I just really, really focus on what their resources are. And it's pretty basic stuff. I mean, one of the biggest areas that, for people in this phase of life, one of their biggest resources is their income,
right,
and their benefits through work. This is a big resource. So we want to make sure that they are optimizing everything that they can through work.
Yeah.
And so we kind of start off there, and from there we figure out, okay, how much you need as emergency reserves, how you've got this cash flow and you've got all these different expenses. How do we make sure that you're saving enough? What, from a work standpoint, can we use? Do you have an HSA that we can maximize? What does your 401k and match look like? What are the insurance options available, disability, not a fun topic, one that's
Right.
always on the, but when your biggest resource is your income,
You got to protect it.
and you're right at a stage where you're not funded for long-term goals and you've got a
Right.
family relying on you, it's a really, really important topic. So is there stuff we can maximize at work? If not, do we need to go out? Life insurance in general. So really, I kind of start there because there are a lot of resources at work, again, for a person
you
who
can
their
leverage.
money is being pulled from so many different that you can leverage.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of tackle, okay, you've got all these resources at work. Taxes are an issue, right? A lot of, taxes is an issue for everybody. So knowing what your tax situation is, what your resources are at work, how do we maximize those options at work to help you reduce your taxes, to hopefully increase your cash flow, because again, you're being pulled in so many different directions.
Right.
Then we'll just look at kind of estate plan. Are your wills outdated? Have they taken into consideration some of the changes that happened in 2018, 2019, 2020? All these different changes, are they reflected in your documents? And also, are they reflecting the changes that are going on in your family?
Right.
What you were thinking when your kids were just babies,
Yeah.
and the people that could help at that point, like parents maybe could have helped,
Right.
but now that they're teenagers,
Yeah.
given that they've aged, maybe that's not the case.
Right.
So we really kind of go through all the areas of
Yeah.
planning, but the key thing is using what they've got today,
Yeah. The present resources.
present resources, to just maximize it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you said that about the risk management aspects, because I think many people ignore that because it is a little messier. But Nick Murray has a great line that I steal all the time: is we have to protect against things that can go wrong.
Yeah.
So we have the luxury of investing for things that could go right. But again, you touched on a lot there. So it's risk management, it's cash reserves, it's education funding, it's tax planning. Obviously, leveraging the benefits.
Absolutely.
You talked a lot about that. It's really important for this group. Goals-based investment planning is kind of obviously the area that I spend a lot of my time on. And then, of course, estate planning and wealth transfer. And at the end of the day, it's the gaps.
Right.
Figure out where are the gaps.
Right.
What are the gaps that we need to close, and really back to these resource allocation again.
Mm-hmm.
How do we fill these gaps in the most efficient way through employer benefits or outside or so forth. So that's great. Do you think that for a typical family there is a perfect plan? Is there an optimal / perfect plan?
Yes.
There is?
I do. I think there is an optimal plan, but we have to recognize that it's constantly changing because it's optimal for now,
Ah, okay.
right? So it might be optimal today,
Okay.
given the circumstances, the things that they're trying to accomplish, and the resources that they have at the time.
Okay.
2 years from now, the optimal plan will change.
Okay.
And in order for an optimal plan to continue to be optimal, you have to be very upfront and transparent, primarily with yourselves, the household. They have to be really honest. I mean, if we created this optimal plan and they're supposed to be saving X amount of dollars every year and they're not, they got to be transparent and say what has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what trade-off are they willing to make?
And what trade-off they're making. But it's always changing. That optimal plan is always changing.
Okay.
Which is why we have this consistent,
coaching.
ongoing review process.
Yeah.
Because what is optimal when we first got together may look totally different 2 years from now when all of a sudden your kid who's dreaming to go to UGA, it's not an option, but they want a similar experience. So they've decided to go to Auburn instead. And that's a totally different cost. But because you've been doing right and living that optimal plan, the old optimal plan, all these years, now you've got these options, and let's look at the trade-off, and the optimal plan has now changed.
Okay. So when you say optimal plan, you're talking about based on the goals that you gave me, our recommendation on an efficient allocation of these resources, but it doesn't mean it can't change.
Absolutely.
Because their goals change, tax laws change, their family situation changes, as we just mentioned. Okay, that's great. And you covered a lot of areas. I mean, there's a lot of areas here that are included in holistic financial planning. How do you stay up on all this? How do you keep up with all these various areas? Because some of it's quite technical.
Yeah. So that's important. Constant education is important. We do have a culture of learning at Tandem Growth. So being in that culture helps. We're constantly reading, taking advantage of any continuing education that's out there, both because we have to do it, but also just, again, for that love of learning. A lot of times, education is driven by client situations that we see. So you and I will see a situation and be like, what's the most efficient way to handle this? Like, is there something there? And it'll help us dig in a little bit further into a topic and help us expand our growth and perspective on a certain topic. But also we've got great resources, professional resources out there. We have a wonderful integrated advisor network with a lot of professionals from different areas. And we just ask them. Whether it's just a specific question or have them do a little bit of an education kind of workshop for us, whatever that may be. But it always starts with that kind of culture of learning.
Yeah. Well, and when you talk about the network, I mean, we collaborate with the network. Absolutely. So we've still got technicians that we bring to the table. I mean, we're not practicing law.
No.
We're not drafting documents. So we do need a high level of estate planning counsel, and obviously that's a lot of the guests on this show. I mean, I bring in a lot of the people, so the audience.
And that collaboration opens our eyes on so many things. So when I'm sitting in a meeting with a client, an estate planning attorney, and I'm participating in, because I've got the client's perspective of what it is they're trying to accomplish, what's important to them, what they want to do for their family, and I'm trying to kind of translate that desire to an attorney, and the attorney is just giving the details of what's the best efficient way to reach that and what are things that we are not considered from a legal standpoint. That constant collaboration just kind of helps us continue to learn and have different ideas and scenarios that are in our background, which is good.
Well, and it adds great value to the client, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's sort of an interpreter between what the technician said and what they said in the office when they were just brainstorming before, without any filters on what can and can't be done legally. Well, this has been awesome, Mona. I don't want to keep you too much longer because I know that you've got a lot on your plate, and it's really, this has been really fantastic.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is awesome. But as we wrap up, so kind of give me a final statement on the benefits of comprehensive planning to this wealth accumulation couple or client.
You truly get to enjoy the journey more.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
So there is a reward today.
There is a reward
today. You're not all breaking rocks for 20 years.
Correct. You get to enjoy the journey more with less stress, and you have someone that's really an advocate, someone that's really on your side, allowing you to live your life, your best life, in a way that's less stressful.
Yeah. Well, and
more resource.
Yeah. And that's true with a lot of great firms that the audience could visit, but certainly they get you too in our firm. So that's a bonus. So, well, any final thoughts or comments as we wrap up?
No. This has been fun. I've always wondered what you do when you do these podcasts. So now I know what you're doing.
Pretty underwhelming, isn't it? Yeah.
No, this has been fun.
Good. Well, great. Well, how can the audience find you? If they want to find Mona, how do they find Mona?
Easy enough. You could just go to tandemgrowth.com and you'll see us on our website, or you could just email me at mona@tandemgrowth.com, MONA@tandemgrowth.com, and happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is great. Well, thank you guys again for joining us today for the Money and Meaning Show. It's been really one of a great show. I've really enjoyed hanging out with you, Mona. We do this all the time.
I know.
And we just need to put a camera in the office when we're just chatting off the cuff, because I think there's some useful information for people who are thinking about their financial plans, or do I need a financial planner, or what happens with a financial planner, and is it just for rich people or whatever? I mean, so great insight. Thanks for joining us on this, and thank you guys for joining us as well. And if you'd like to learn more, you can check us out on the website, as Mona mentioned, tandemgrowth.com. If you'd like to give some feedback on the show, you can email us at moneyandmeaning@tandemgrowth.com. And if you check us out on your various streaming services, iTunes, Spotify, the normal ones, check us out. Give us a rating if you like the show, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Money and Meaning Show with Jeff Bernier, a show dedicated to help you gain the confidence and freedom to lead a life of personal significance and help you get your actions and resources in alignment with what matters most. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions for Jeff or comments on the show, feel free to reach out to us at moneyandmeaning@tandemgrowth.com, or you can find us on the web at www.tandemgrowth.com. Jeff Bernier is the President and Chief Investment Officer at Tandem Growth Financial Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This show is a production of Tandem Growth Financial Advisors, LLC. All information discussed is general in nature, is provided for informational purposes only, and should not be construed as specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Listeners should consult an attorney or tax professional regarding their specific legal or tax situation. Listeners should not rely on the content of this podcast as the basis for any investment decisions. A professional advisor should be consulted, and/or independent due diligence should be conducted before implementing anything discussed in this show. While information presented is believed to be factual and up to date, Tandem Growth Financial Advisors, LLC, does not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Tandem Growth Financial Advisors, LLC, does not make any representations or warranties as to the accuracy, timeliness, suitability, completeness, or relevance of any information prepared by any unaffiliated third party, such as guests on the podcast, and takes no responsibility for the same.